Projects live in a world of tension. And our challenge is, how do we manage that tension? And then when I talk about projects, that could be anything from a family dinner, which we'll talk to in a second, through to massive enterprise change like Workday or US UI integration with other companies. So tension in itself can feel difficult. That can show up in the meetings when you're struggling to get a decision made, or when you're trying to get action and you can't get agreement on something. Tension itself can be used to create momentum. So what we're going to do today is walk through how to manage that tension, turn it into momentum, and give you 3 frameworks that you can use tomorrow. But let's dive into what projects are and what tension is first. So project is pretty much anything that involves a change. Tension, I'm going to explain using this triangle. So tension is almost like a funnel. So on one end you have, I'm going to say users. So that's the consumer of the project, the end result that you're going to deliver. And on the other end, you have the project delivery. And the tension exists between user wants, needs, and desires through to a project which just needs to deliver the system, the application, the change. So let's use the family dinner example. So for a family dinner, a couple of parents might want to have sushi for dinner, but one of the kids wants spaghetti bolognese, one of the kids wants pizza. So there's already different wants and needs for that family dinner. The tension exists in terms of what do we deliver for dinner? What do we put on the table? Because you can only provide one meal. Well, ideally you want to provide one meal. So the one meal is the output. The desire for dinner is the input, and that's the tension we have to manage. How do we work through the choice of dinner? What dinner do we serve tonight? And the same exists for IT projects or big construction projects, because user wants in terms of, I just need the system to be faster, I need this form to be approved quicker, or I actually don't want to do the project at all because I'm too busy in my day job. All these wants, needs, and desires create tension for a project that has to deliver a result within the constraints of budget, schedule, and quality and time. So the challenge we face is, how do we manage that tension from day-to-day meetings that might go on for too long, emails that copy millions of people, or decisions that can't get made, into a new world of managed tension where decisions are made quickly. Projects feel like they're running like trains. We're delivering, collaborating, and we're having fun. So today, let me share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly of projects. And we're going to build up 3 simple frameworks into this diagram, this little picture here we created, to talk you through 3 simple frameworks that you can use tomorrow to help you manage that tension and turn it into momentum. What I'm also doing is sharing my 30-odd years of experience with managing IT projects. I've done 10 years of development of coding way back in the 90s when we started on mainframe and machine code learning for programming traffic lights, all the way up through leading change with my experience with Ernst & Young in the UK, then came over to Canada, working with Deloitte, working on big, large enterprise change projects such as Workday, SAP, Oracle implementations. And then for the last few years, have my own company, We Deliver Your Vision. I'm also helping with Enbridge on the US UI project for the integration of infrastructure and network. Bottom line is, I've seen it all. I've seen both from my own projects and other people's projects, the good, bad, and ugly. And that's what I want to share with you today. So we're ready? Let's jump into the good. So the good is the first of the frameworks. And I'm going to use an example of SpaceX. So whatever your thoughts are on Elon Musk, he knows how to build a business. He's built a massive business, or many businesses, hundreds of thousands of people, all with a SpaceX goal of getting to Mars. That's a pretty big goal. In fact, he wants to get a mission to Mars by next year, 2026. And that's going to ramp up to 300 missions to Mars by 2030. And again, regardless of your views on Elon Musk, he has big goals and he has big, massive growth in his companies. He has big visionary goals of what he wants to achieve. Kind of reminds me, if anyone is old enough to remember the 1990s movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger called Total Recall. It was one of my favorites. There's a big phrase in there called "get your ass to Mars." That's pretty much what Elon Musk is doing, is saying, get your ass to Mars. But that's a huge, big goal that he wants to achieve. So to do that, he has to think differently. So he built rockets and reusable fuselage, which is actually 10 times cheaper and twice as fast as NASA. So NASA have been building rockets to the moon for decades, but he's come along in the last 10 years or so and building them 10 times cheaper and twice as fast. So he's bringing that new way of thinking. So why does that make a good project? Why is that a good thing to do? So he does it with this model triangle here. So what Elon Musk is doing, and many other good projects are doing as well, is he's setting this big, lofty goal. So he starts with a goal. Then he builds out the strategy to deliver that goal. And as a result of that, he creates actions. What we're managing here is the strategy, goals, and the actions. Point here is the mission to Mars is the goal. The strategy is we need to develop new types of rockets. And the actions are we need to create this new reusable fuselage, or whatever it is. But either way, he's building out a goal to a strategy to an action. Let's go back to that dinner example for a family meal. The goal is one meal. The strategy is we need to pick one meal for the whole family. The actions are we're going to run a poll. We're going to have a vote on which meal to have tonight, or we may have different meals every day. But either way, our strategy for delivering those meals will result in a meal. Point is, we're tying the actions, the strategy to the goal. And you have to keep remembering that. This is not a one-off. Here's the trick. It's not a one-off. Because Elon Musk is reminding his team that we're getting to Mars every single day. And that's what good projects do. They focus on that goal. So for example, with a workday project I was working on a few years ago, our goal was a time-driven goal. We had to deliver by July of that year, and we had to achieve a certain number of cost savings. One thing I do want to remind you of here is, okay, this is great, John. This is big strategic thinking, but we need to think about how do we translate that into day-to-day actions. And so I want to introduce a real quick framework in addition to this one for you. So we'll remember that one down here, the goal, strategy, and actions. So I want to talk about the definition of done. And trust me, this will save you a lot of time, effort, and stress because it's such a simple framework, but we often forget to do it. The definition of done is what you will deliver. And that could be for your goal, for your strategy, or for your actions. And the reason the definition of done is so useful is because you do use 3 F's: the facts, the feelings, and the functionality. Getting back to the definition of done, when you're defining what needs to be done, you're talking about the facts, the feelings, and the functionality. So for a presentation due on Tuesday, the fact is we have to have it in PowerPoint format. It has to be done by noon on Tuesday and has to make sure it includes these key slides. Those are the facts. The feelings are, I want to have a presentation that gives me confidence. I'm presenting to leadership team or my project team. So I want to have confidence in the numbers. So it's got to flow. I've got to feel good about how this presentation is coming together. The functionality means I need to inform my team or the audience of the next action. Typically, a presentation will inspire action going forward. So that's the facts, the feelings, and functionality of a presentation. And again, very simple, very easy to use. I was using this just yesterday. We had a big integration workshop with our teams, and I was leading a session there, and we talked about definition of done for every single session. So we talked about good. Let's talk about bad. So the first thing to know about bad projects is they deliver. You're probably wondering why I've got a picture of the Sydney Opera House here, because good projects ultimately do finish. They deliver a result. In the case of the Sydney Opera House, it delivered an iconic tourist attraction in Sydney, the Sydney Opera House. But was it a good project? No, it was actually a bad project, because this bad project originally was projected to take 4 years. Does anyone want to guess how long it took to build the Sydney Opera House? Because whatever you're thinking, you need to increase it. It actually took 14 years. So let's talk about budget. The original budget was $7 million. If you were to guess about what this project, again, it's a bad project, remember? So think about what it could be. And trust me, whatever number you think of, double it. Because the actual project came in at 103 million. It went massively over budget. So why was that? Because the end result is good, but the project was bad. And the reason this did this was for a number of reasons. I'm going to talk about the inside, outside views in a second. But to make this a bit more real, this actually also applies to large enterprise IT projects, or like Workday. So I think you've all used Workday. It's used here pretty commonly. I've often been called in previous work to rescue Workday projects. I've done this 3 times now. Now, nothing against Workday. I think it's an awesome product. I think it's a great software solution. But the challenge with Workday is it's not just about the Workday app. It's also about the integrations. You have to connect your Workday system to your payroll, to your organization chart design, to your benefits, to many other systems. And that's where it gets complicated. So typical Workday projects I've had to come in to rescue have gone long, have gone extra budget, and I've had to come in and reset them. And like I said, the reason being is because of the complexity. So while Workday itself is a very simple, easy to use, awesome product, the complexity with the integrations in a company, the payroll, organization design, or the benefits, that creates unique complexity that you have to work through. So how do you work through this? Let's get into that second model for bad. 3 circles. If anyone's seen the Simon Sinek, a great video, it's about 15 years old now, but look it up on YouTube. Simon Sinek and the power of why and why you do things. It's similar to this, and it inspired me to create this model. So this is based on an outside, inside view, and then act. So what the Sydney Opera House did, and what a lot of Workday projects and IT projects can fall foul of, is you jump into the act. You want to get shovels in the ground. You want to get moving. You want to be anxious to move, because planning, design doesn't feel like real work, but trust me, it is. So this is what caused the failure of, or the bad experience of the Sydney Opera House, is they started build before they'd even finished the engineering drawings. They didn't even know how they were going to build this thing, even though they started the project. They had confidence in figuring out as they went along. Unfortunately, that confidence translated into 14 years, 103 million. So what should they have done? The outside view is looking at other projects like yours to get what we call reference class forecast. So the reference class forecast or estimate is basically a comparison to similar projects. So you're probably thinking right now, my project is unique. There are no other Sydney Opera Houses in the world. And while that may be true, I guarantee there's elements of the projects you're working on and elements of this Sydney Opera House that other people have built before. So even if the overall project is unique, there's going to be elements, maybe the structural design, the foundations, maybe how you're implementing Workday payroll that other people have done before. And the point here is get the outside view to find out how long it took, what were the complications, what was the cost? Because then when you start planning out your project, and if it's anything similar to the Opera House, is you're planning on a $103 million budget, not a $7 million budget. And that's how you make the first step to make your project not go bad. So once you have the outside view, you then need to get the inside view. And this is where you and your team and your specialty comes in, because again, there's always a uniqueness applying the project. So for the Opera House, that's where we said, okay, we've got some unique design here. So let's apply expertise. Let's bring in the technical experts to start planning out the detail. The point is you're getting more information to build on the reference class forecast. And you're doing this before you start delivery configuration or before you put shovels in the ground. This planning or design is real work. We often want to get and move and show delivery. And while that can be done with MVP, minimum viable products or proof of concepts, make sure you do the detailed planning with the outside, inside view before you start to act. And if you're already midway through a project, you can always do this again. You can always say, hey, we're this far through the project. Let's get an outside view on this. I'm often called in to give advice on projects that are halfway through, just to give that sense check to see, hey, given what we're doing, is this making sense? Is there anything else we need to consider? This is because guarantee things will change. So we talked about good, we talked about ugly, bad. Let's talk about ugly. So the first thing about ugly, trust me, I'm going to say it anyway. The thing about ugly is about you. And I don't mean you're ugly. Please do not take it that way. But what I'm saying is you are often the biggest factor in how projects go. And again, nothing personal, based on my experience. I'm going to talk you through some techniques to help you make ugly projects go the best they can. Because the challenge with ugly projects, so a bad project typically went over budget, over schedule. An ugly project just fails. It doesn't get delivered, it's cancelled, doesn't get to the end result. So an ugly project, let me explain how we can work through the ugly projects. So an ugly project, I'm going to use the example of Dyson. So Dyson, who makes vacuums and hair dryers, he actually built an electric car, believe it or not. He sexily called it the N526. But what you need to know about the Dyson electric car is it was started in 2017. It was then cancelled in 2019. The whole project cost 500 million. And I think there was about 300 people on the project at one point. Either way, it was effectively an ugly failure of a project for Dyson, which loved Dyson. I think he's visionary. I think he's done amazing things. The challenge with this project is that Dyson applied the principle of we invent it better. We are the best at what we do. We can re-engineer this to make it the best product ever. And while that works very well for small consumer products like vacuums and hair dryers, it doesn't work as well for big investment projects like electric vehicles. So while Tesla, Ford, and every other company is making electric vehicles for a reasonable price of the 30 to 100,000, the N526 was cancelled because basically the car was going to end up being, it was an amazing car. You should look it up online, by the way. It is a luxury vehicle, but the sale price was going to be $300,000. So the market was very limited, if none. It sunk so much cost into it, they just cancelled the project. Before I get to the how to solve this, I'm going to talk about a project I worked on, an ugly project that I had. So back in the year 2000, so a while ago, I actually got to lead an AI project. So this is basic AI because this is back in the 2000s. But I was working for a life insurance company. So I'd graduated electrical engineering, got into my first IT graduate role. And a few years later, got to pick up this IT project for AI black box, which is basically delivering life insurance quotes automatically over the internet on a web page, which nowadays is very easy. Anyone can do this. But at the time in the year 2000, this was groundbreaking stuff. So we built this AI black box to sell life insurance products over the internet. And we had massive success financially. We actually increased revenue for the life insurance products by 23%. So I was really chuffed, taking the project up to the leadership team. Was called up to do a report and presentation. And I was expecting to be applauded, maybe get a pay rise, bonus, a promotion. I was really excited about it. But when I got to the leadership team, they actually told me, John, they actually stopped me just as I started the presentation and said, John, we're cancelling the project. And I was floored. We just increased revenue by 23%. Why are we cancelling the project? And what happened is, because although the revenue had increased, customer satisfaction, the net promoter score, customer appreciation of the company had actually dropped by 15%. And the reason that's important is because this life insurance company was known as the Friendly Society. Their friendliness was built up through phone calls, even in-home visits, relationships with customers. So a lot of these sales reps and these customer service agents had relationships with customers for sometimes decades. They truly sold life insurance through to mortgages, through to pensions. And a quick AI quote took away the interaction. It meant they didn't actually need to talk to anyone, and customers didn't like that. So they canceled the project. So that was a really good lesson for me in terms of making sure I captured the feelings, functionality, and facts of my project. Also aligned it to the goals. Remember, we talked about the triangle earlier for the goals and the strategy. The goal of the company was friendly. My strategy was to build this AI project, and that was the disconnect. So what I'm saying here is you need to think about projects differently. And the biggest challenge is you, because you bring a certain set of expertise, certain set of bias, certain set of experience, and that's good. We need that for projects, but you also need to consider everything else around you. And what I like to use for that is a technique from Edward de Bono. So Edward de Bono invented the 6 thinking hats. So if anyone's done the 6 thinking hats, it's an awesome workshop which you can apply very, very quickly into your day-to-day working, where you literally, in the workshop, you literally put on 6 different colored hats, and each hat has a different way of thinking. So Edward de Bono introduced this thinking. He calls it lateral thinking. It's basically early design thinking. So what Edward de Bono, and by the way, he wrote about I think it was 85 books. He was a professor at Harvard, Stanford, all MIT, all the big universities in the 1950s and 60s. But his 6 thinking hats is an awesome course to look up. But I'll give you the 3 that I think are the most important. So of the 3 thinking hats, we use the white hat, which is about facts. Then we look at the red hat, which is about feelings. And you're probably noticing a trend here with that facts, feelings, and functionality. And then the green hat is options. Actually, let's write this slightly differently so you can read it. Do that, options. So facts, options, and feelings. So the point here is that you put on each of these hats to take away any bias. So when you're faced with a challenging project, let's start with the white hat. What are the facts? Are we over budget, or what budget are we working to? What deliverables or milestones do we need to meet? Again, what are the hard facts that we need to achieve? Maybe tariffs are changing our environment halfway through the project. Either way, there's facts that need to be considered. Then go to the feelings. Similar to earlier, how are we feeling about that? How is my team reacting to these facts that we've got to meet? What feelings do we need to account for to make sure that we achieve the facts for the project? And then thirdly, we get to options. So how can we deliver the project? What options do we have? So given these facts that we're dealing with, the feelings of the team and our stakeholders and customers, what options do we have? We mentioned Agile earlier. If this is a waterfall project, maybe we quickly spin up a short Agile sprint to prove out a new way of doing things, to test out a new product, to, as you said earlier, put the pipe in the ground. Frame your thinking, and you spend 5 or 10 minutes ideally. What are all the facts? Work all that. Then you switch to feelings, and then you switch to the green hat options. And this is a great way to mitigate the problems or hedge off the problems of ugly projects when it gets emotional. There's a lot of tension, maybe even like we talked back about the family dinner. Remember the family dinner at the beginning? What are the facts? We have to deliver 1 meal. What are the feelings? My teenage boy is very passionate about pizza tonight. I'm not going to fight him on this one because it's just not worth the drama. So what options do we have? Okay, we're going to have this pizza. We're going to have a meat feast pizza tonight, but my daughter is vegetarian, so we're going to give her a vegetarian option. So we get pizza, but there's various options there as well. So a good way to deal with ugly, if we think back to the Dyson and the AI example, the black box that I was working on, think about the facts, the feelings, and the options. So putting this all together, Actually, you know what? Let's go back to the other way. We talked about the good, bad, and ugly, and we went back to this diagram. So how this diagram all comes together is we started out with the Elon Musk and the SpaceX example, and we talked about the goals, the strategy, and the actions. Then we moved on to the Sydney Opera House and Workday projects and how it's important to have the outside, inside, and act. So there's the outside view, the inside view, and then the act. And then we wrapped up with ugly projects, with Dyson and the AI black box, with the 3 thinking hats of the white, red, and green. By the way, a real quick way to remember the white, red, and green is the Italian flag, white, red, and green. Or if there's any Welsh folks out there, the Wales flag has white, green, and a red dragon on it as well. So that's a quick way of remembering the white, red, and green. But the point here is with the good, bad, and ugly, with those 3 frameworks, that's techniques and frameworks that you can use to help manage tension and ultimately turn it into momentum. If a project truly is unique, as in my project, we've never done this before. And while that may be true, because projects by definition are unique endeavors, otherwise they're operational, they're manufacturing, they're a production line. Projects are by definition unique. However, even if your project truly is unique, don't let that stop you understanding how you can make it a good project, how you can make sure it goes well. So there's going to be elements of your project that people have done before. So even the Sydney Opera House, there's going to be elements of that engineering that you could find out from someone else that they've done that before, even if they've not built this shell example. And so I just wanted to remind folks of that one around uniqueness is good and you're special for sure, but just know that there will be other people who've done similar work that is very useful for your projects.